Ever wish you could kind of rewrite the rules of real estate investing? Ditch the conventional path, the one everyone talks about, and unlock those strategies most people don't even know exist. Well, today, we're doing just that.
It's about getting creative, thinking outside the box.
Exactly. Today's deep dive is all about getting you ahead of the curve with some, let's say, alternative real estate investing techniques.
Right.
We're taking our cues from Genius Star, the mind behind that Equity Empire YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, he's got some interesting ideas.
He's built a serious following by showcasing these, unconventional paths to real estate success. And lucky for us, he's got 3 specific strategies that we're going to break down for you today. First up is lease options.
Lease options, always an interesting one.
Now, I'll admit, when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, this sounds a little too good to be true. Imagine controlling a property and potentially, profiting from it, all without having to actually buy it outright.
Yeah, that's the allure of lease options, right? It's all about leverage, controlling more with less.
So walk us through the mechanics of it. How does a lease option actually work in practice?
So with the lease option, you're basically entering into this agreement where you have the right, but not the obligation, right? The right to purchase a property at a predetermined price. And this happens within a specific time frame. During that time, you're leasing the property to a tenant buyer, ideally, at a rate that not only covers your costs, but puts some cash back in your pocket.
Okay, so there's that potential for immediate cash flow, even though you don't own the property just yet. But what's in it for the seller? Why would they agree to this kind of arrangement?
Right, there's got to be something in it for them. Right.
Exactly.
Well, there are a few reasons why a seller might be open to a lease option. Sometimes they're struggling to sell through those traditional means. Maybe the property needs a little work or the market's a bit sluggish.
So a way to kind of sidestep a slow market.
Exactly. Or they might be enticed by that upfront option fee that you pay to secure the right to buy later.
Genius Star had this example. I think it was a $200,000 property, and you might pay a $10,000 option fee up front.
Yeah, I've seen similar deals.
That's not a huge chunk of change compared to a traditional down payment, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a major reason why lease options are so appealing to new investors or those with, let's say, limited capital. It really lowers that barrier to entry.
It's like dipping your toes in the water without, diving head first.
Exactly. But of course, like any investment strategy, there are risks.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some of the downsides potential investors should be aware of?
The biggest risk is that the option you're holding doesn't pan out the way you hoped. Like if the market takes a nosedive or the property value drops for whatever reason, the tenant buyer might just say, you know what, I'm out. They might decide not to exercise that option to buy. Then you're stuck, potentially holding a property that's worth less than you agreed to pay.
So it's not a guaranteed home run.
Exactly.
You really need to do your homework.
Due diligence is key, absolutely crucial with lease options. You have to analyze the property's current market value, factor in potential repair costs, and make a calculated decision about that option price. Is it realistic, given your investment timeline and all?
So it's not just about finding a good deal. It's about making sure the deal aligns with your overall strategy and risk tolerance.
100%. You got to be smart about it. Yeah, you could definitely say that seller financing, it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah. It's all about, going directly to the source, striking a deal directly with the seller. You're basically sidestepping those traditional mortgage lenders.
So instead of jumping through all those hoops with the bank and those loan applications, you're basically cutting to the chase, right? Going straight to the person who owns the property. I can definitely see the appeal there for investors. But what's the motivation for the seller? Why would they want to, essentially become the bank in this situation?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Well, sometimes a seller is motivated by speed and simplicity. Maybe they're facing a life change, a divorce, a job relocation, something like that. Or maybe they need to free up some assets quickly. Whatever the reason, they might just be looking for the fastest, easiest path to cash. And seller financing can definitely provide that.
So it's less about the long game and more about a quick and clean break from the property.
Exactly. And sometimes they're drawn to the idea of that consistent cash flow that seller financing can offer, especially if they're still paying a mortgage on the property themselves. It becomes about replacing that mortgage payment with your payments, essentially.
So it sounds like there's potential for a win-win scenario. The investor gets access to a property without all those traditional financing hurdles. And the seller gets a potentially smoother and faster sale maybe even with that ongoing income stream we were talking about. And, Genius Star had that example of scooping up a $300,000 property using seller financing.
Yeah, he's got a knack for finding those deals.
That's a pretty sweet deal. Controlling a significant asset without dropping a massive down payment or even dealing with a bank. But with that kind of flexibility, there's got to be some serious considerations, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of those nuances that investors should really be aware of when they're exploring this whole seller financing thing?
Well, one of the most critical aspects is making sure you've got a rock-solid agreement in place.
Like, we're not talking about a handshake deal here.
No. This is serious business. You need a legally binding document that clearly outlines all the terms of the sale. We're talking purchase price, down payment if there is one, interest rates, the whole 9 yards. Everything needs to be spelled out, crystal clear, no room for ambiguity.
So it's almost like the rule book for the whole transaction, right? Like this agreement, it governs everything. What are some of those make or break elements that need to be buttoned up, to protect both the buyer and the seller?
You hit the nail on the head. Both parties need to be totally in sync, on the same page about every single detail. For instance, is there a balloon payment down the line? That's a big one. And what happens if the buyer, for whatever reason, can't keep up with the payments and defaults? Is there a plan in place for that? And here's another one. Is there a prepayment penalty if the buyer decides, you know what, I want to pay off this loan early? All these things need to be laid out super clearly from the get-go.
It's almost like a prenuptial agreement, but for a house. It's about anticipating those what ifs, and just making sure everybody is completely on the same page right from the beginning. But it's more than just paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? What about due diligence? How does that factor into the seller financing equation?
Absolutely. You can't skip due diligence. Even though you're not going through a lender, you still need to approach it with the same level of seriousness and thoroughness. That means a complete title search is non-negotiable. You got to make sure there aren't any liens or surprises lurking on that property title. And you'll want to take a good hard look at the seller's financial history, just like a bank would, to get a feel for their ability to hold up their end of the bargain. You want to make sure they're financially sound and can actually fulfill the terms of the agreement.
So it's about protecting yourself from those hidden gotchas, those potential financial pitfalls down the line.
You got it. You're essentially stepping into a situation where trust is paramount. And that goes both ways. The seller will also want to peek under the hood, so to speak, look into your financial background, check your credit worthiness, make sure you can handle the payment schedule.
Makes sense. You're both placing a lot of trust in each other. It's a two-way street. Speaking of trust, let's shift gears to Genius Star's third strategy, the one he claims can potentially rake in $100,000 or more, the BRRR strategy. Now that's what I call eye-catching. Break it down for us. What does BRRR stand for, and how does it actually work? Okay, lay it on me. Decode this whole BRRR strategy. It does sound kind of like, something straight out of a real estate investor's dream journal, $100,000 in profit. Sign me up.
Well, it's not quite as easy as snapping your fingers, but it is a powerful strategy, I'll give you that. But it's got to be executed right. Think of it like this, BRRR. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It's a whole system, really, designed to keep that momentum going, create a real snowball effect for building your wealth through real estate.
So it's not just about flipping a single property. It's more like creating a system, a sustainable one, for building a whole real estate empire over time, right?
You got it. It's about thinking bigger, playing the long game.
Okay, I like the sound of that. So let's unpack it step by step. I've got to wrap my head around this whole process.
Sure thing. It all starts with buy, right? But here's the catch. It can't just be any property. You got to be strategic about it. The name of the game is finding those undervalued gems, those properties with that hidden potential, what we call forced appreciation. Could be something as simple as a house that needs a little TLC, a fresh coat of paint, or maybe some updated fixtures, Or it could be a property in a neighborhood that's, on the upswing, about to boom.
So it's about having that vision, seeing the potential that others might be missing. You're looking for those diamonds in the rough.
Exactly. And once you've found that diamond in the rough, then comes the rehab phase.
Time to roll up the sleeves and get to work.
Well, not literally, unless you're handy like that. But yeah, this is where you make those strategic investments, those renovations that'll really make that property shine, increase its value. Maybe it's a kitchen makeover, adding that extra bathroom that everyone wants, or sprucing up the landscaping to boost that curb appeal. The goal is to make it irresistible to renters, drive up demand, and of course, increase that market value.
So you're basically manufacturing equity.
Right, you got it. You're adding value where others didn't see it.
Okay, and then once you've got the place looking sharp, it's time for rent. Finding those quality tenants who are going to pay rent on time, ideally creating that nice steady stream of passive income.
That's the dream, right? Passive income.
Absolutely, the holy grail. But then comes the really interesting part, the refinance step. This is where things get kind of next level. Explain that whole process.
All right, so this is where the BRRR strategy really shows what it's made of. Here's the thing. By refinancing that property at its new, improved, higher value, you can potentially pull out a big chunk, maybe even all of your initial investment. You're basically tapping into that equity you created.
Hold on, so let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You're buying low, fixing it up strategically, getting those tenants in there, and then you're using the fact that it's now worth way more to basically get your initial investment back, potentially even more, and you use that to do it all again.
Bingo, you got it. And that, my friend, that chunk of cash from the refinance, well, that becomes the fuel for the most exciting part, the repeat part of BRRR. You take those profits and reinvest them, fire up the engine, and dive into another BRRR project. And just like that, you're expanding your portfolio, building that real estate empire one property at a time.
That is amazing. It's like this awesome cycle of real estate wealth creation. But come on, let's be real for a second. It can't be all sunshine and rainbows, right? What about those potential bumps in the road? What should investors be prepared for? You know, those things that could throw a wrench in the whole BRRR strategy.
Okay, so you're right. It's not always smooth sailing. One of the biggest hurdles, I'd say, is nailing those renovation costs. It's easy to underestimate, those unexpected repairs pop up, things get delayed, suddenly you're over budget and over time. That can really put a dent in your profits if you're not careful.
Especially for those of us who aren't exactly contractors ourselves. I know I'd be terrible at guessing how much a bathroom remodel should cost, for example.
Yeah. Right, exactly. That's where having a good team, reliable contractors that can make or break the whole thing. And then there are always those external factors like market fluctuations. You can do all the planning in the world, but if the market cools down or interest rates go haywire, it can really impact your refinance options or even finding buyers down the line.
So it's all about striking a balance between careful planning and being able to, roll with the punches when things inevitably come up.
Absolutely. A little bit of flexibility goes a long way in this business.
Genius Star's insights are seriously inspiring, but ultimately it's up to each individual investor to take that inspiration and turn it into action.
He gives you the tools and the knowledge, but you're the one building the empire.
Exactly. Well, on that note of empowerment, we're wrapping up our deep dive into these alternative real estate investing strategies. Lease options, seller financing, BRRR. Who knew there were so many ways to play the real estate game?
There are always different paths to success, right?
We hope you've learned something new today, and most importantly, we hope you're fired up and ready to explore these unconventional paths to building your own real estate empire. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. The real journey starts when you take what you've learned and turn it into action. Create the future you envision.